What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Ty from Ty Drives, and this is the 2023 Volvo XC90 with the B5 engine and in the core trim level. So we have kind of a more basic XC90 for you to take a look at and some changes for 2023. So throughout this video, we're going to take a look at the exterior, and then we're going to pop the hood, see what powers this, and also what powers any other XC90 in the lineup. We'll then make our way to the interior, check out the cargo area, the third row seats, the second row of seats, and the first row of seating and the driver's cockpit. We'll kind of detail all of the features on the throughout the whole vehicle. Now you're going to want to make sure to stay tuned to the end of the video too, because I'm going to strap this GoPro to my head and we're going to get a first-person driving perspective. We're going to take this for a little test drive. But getting straight into it with the features, full LED headlamps as standard, so you have the high beams, low beams, daytime running lights, and even the turn signals are all LED. Part of the cold climate package, we have LED, or I should say washers for the LED headlights. We also have front parking sensors that span the front bumper, and taking a look down below, we even have LED fog lamps for the front, which is very nice. Look very nice, all illuminated. And a pretty large, nicely accented in chrome grille. Taking a look at the hood, we have some pretty neat shapes towards the edge and pretty nice wheels too. Very sort of formal looking wheels, I guess I could describe it as. 275/45 is the size of the tire, and 20 inches is the size of the wheel. So this is kind of an optional wheel designed for the base trim level. Definitely a very worth it upgrade. I really like the look of these wheels. So we have bright work surrounding all the windows and some pretty nice trim to protect the metal on the doors down below. So we have roof rails, panoramic moonroof, and the shark fin antenna. The mirrors have blind spot warning and the LED turn signal indicator. And also, all four door handles have the smart key entry, so you could put your finger right there, it will lock the vehicle, and put your hand behind the handle will unlock the vehicle. And again, that goes for all four door handles. Taking a look back here, we have the same wheel and tire setup. Again, very nice looking wheels, definitely worth the extra some odd $800, I believe. And back here, very nice design for the rear taillights, and they get the same LED treatment. So the brake lights, turn signals, taillights, everything is LED back here. Again, looks very nice, all illuminated with that nice long light bar that goes up and down. Back here we also have parking sensors and some badging, the XC90, the Volvo badging, and just below it we have the reversing camera and the trunk release, and the B5 all-wheel drive badging, which indicates our powertrain. So we have very subtle different styling cues on the XC90, and this has been out for quite some time. So how do you think this XC90 has aged over its life cycle? Let me know in the comments. So under the hood we have three different engine options to discuss. This one happens to have the B5 engine option, which is the base engine. It's a 2-liter turbocharged inline 4 with 247 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, which aren't bad numbers, but just keep in mind this is a 3-row SUV. So you might want to upgrade to the B6, which is that same motor with the addition of a supercharger that has 295 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. Now, if you guys are a race car driver, but you also have kids, you might want to take a look at the T8, which is that same motor with the turbocharger, with the supercharger, and electric motors, which makes it a plug-in hybrid. And that makes 455 horsepower and 523 pound-feet of torque. I'd definitely love to drive one of those and see what it's like. But for now, we are working with the B5, and we'll definitely get to see how it's like on the road. We'll get to see if it's maybe underpowered, maybe not. We'll definitely stay tuned to the end of the video to see that. But underneath the hood, pretty clean engine design. You know, you have a pretty big engine cover, your intake's out front and the exhaust side is out back, and some pretty accessible fluids, you know, bright colored things to open the hood. And take a look at that seal all the way around the motor to keep unwanted engine noise out. Alrighty, next we can take a look at the cargo area. Full powered trunk lid as you'd expect, and a pretty large loading area. So, of course, 3-row crossover are all XC90s. You know, you can either get a 6-passenger or a 7-passenger. This one happens to be the 7-passenger, so that means we have a middle seat in the second row. Otherwise, we'd get captain's chairs for the second row, which is a very nice feature that I like very much. But this is the 7-seater, as I said before. So I kind of left one of the third row seats up so you get an idea of the cargo space behind the third row and also behind the second row. So both pretty good and very competitive amount of cargo space. So back here we have first aid kit, carpeted, and our all-weather floor mats. We also have a nice array of trunk mats too that are rubberized. So when you have the third row folded, you have sort of 3 different pieces that lay over the third row so that you don't get all this carpet, you know, nasty and dirty and things like that. But amenities back here, we have LED lights, grocery bag hangers, and it's pretty easy to fold the third row. You just kind of go like this and it will fold back. You can also fold up the headrests as well. Kind of a half fold of this lever will fold down the headrests. But back here we have some storage and cup holders to either side. You can also see some cargo anchors back there, you know, more lighting, a 12-volt power outlet. And underneath the cargo floor we have the spare tire. 2 buttons up here, one to close the trunk and one to close it and lock the vehicle. So at this point we'll open up the rear door. We'll get a better view of the third row and the second row at that. But first off, let's check out the rear door panel. So black interior for this vehicle goes very good with the silver exterior, and we have the leatherette seating surfaces and armrests. Of course, real leather is available, also Napa leather in the upper trims. Very nice sort of brushed stainless sort of look to the trim too. I really like that. 10-speaker audio system is the base audio system. However, you can upgrade to a Harman Kardon if you'd like, as well as a Bowers & Wilkins even above that. So yeah, the second row seats look very nice, and you could either fold them down like so with this lever, and they kind of fold flat like so, or if you'd like to gain access to the third row, you just kind of tilt the seats upwards and it'll slide forwards like so. Taking a look back here, the third row is somewhat roomy. You know, it's not a huge third row SUV like a Suburban or anything like that, but as you can see, definitely enough legroom back here to fit your kids. So let's hop in and see how much room we have back here. Now these second row seats also do slide back and forth, so there's a little lever under here where you can slide back and forth. If you have third row passengers, you know, you want to give them a little bit more room, and you definitely still have plenty of room in the second row, because with the seats all the way back, you know, I'm 5'10", I have probably a good 4 or 5 inches of legroom, so you can definitely scoot this seat forward for the sake of the third row passengers. The third row back, or the third seat in the middle row here is pretty roomy too. Not a huge drivetrain hump, so they definitely be pretty comfy back here. You can actually fold this seat separate from the other two. There's a little pass-through, and there's also an armrest back here with some cup holders. Very nice. You have other amenities such as the grab handles and LED illumination. You also have a two-zone climate control for the rear too. So each passenger back here, so the two passengers back here will have their own temperature displays and fan speed, and also heated seats back here too as part of the cold climate package. They also do have a couple of USB-C chargers on the back of the center console there. And at this point, we'll hop out of the rear and hop into the front. Pretty similar design up front for the doors, just a few more buttons back here. Nice stainless steel over here, the 3-person memory, your powered child locks for the rear doors, and also all of your windows, power folding mirrors, a couple of speakers and storage. We also have the sill plates over here, air vent over here, the trunk release, as well as a little storage tray there. We have the tilt telescoping steering wheel lever right up there, and our pedals down below. As for our seats, again, we have the black leatherette interior. Very nice design to the seats with the stitching on the outside, and just a pretty, good looking seat, and large headrest too. We have full powered with the two-way lumbar too. And we'll hop in and take a look at the driver's cockpit. Alrighty, so here's the key for the XC90, pretty traditional Volvo key. We have all the buttons on the side, so the lock, unlock, trunk release, and panic alarm. We also have a little switch right here to kind of take the key apart, and there's a physical key on the inside in case you need to use that, your battery goes dead or something like that. But we have this switch here to turn the ignition on. And it's pretty neat since all of the XC90s of 2023 are mild hybrids, which means, there's a little generator, electric motor that aids in starting the vehicle for the start-stop. Also, when you're just starting the vehicle normally, you don't hear that starter noise, that cranking noise from the starter. You just kind of hear the engine whir on. So let's take a look at the driver's cockpit, starting off with the steering wheel. So nicely leather wrapped. We have all the buttons over here for the adaptive cruise control, and all the buttons over here for media and the screen up top. Below, in back of the steering wheel, I should say, we have 2 stalks for your turn signals, your automatic high beams, as well as your fog lights and just the rest of your headlights. And then we also have this stalk over here to control your front and rear wipers. And that brings me up to the digital screen up here. Very nice looking screen, very clear graphics for the screen too, although it's just not very configurable. As you can see, we have the Google Maps in the center. You could take that out if you want a more simplistic gauge cluster, but I like to leave it up since I like to see the maps. We have a speedometer and rev gauge over here, what gear you're in, and the gas gauge at the bottom. Some more things like your headlights and the lane keep assist controls and exterior temperature and things like that. But that really is it. You can kind of press this button here to get your trip information. But other than that, there's not a whole lot that you can display up here. But it is a very nice looking gauge cluster. Upper dash is nice, soft to the touch, and you also have a center channel speaker up there. We have the new Google-based system here, both in the center screen and the digital gauge cluster, and that is new on the XC90 for 2023. Between 2022, for the 2022 model year, rather, I should say, half of the Volvo lineup had this system and half had the older Sensus system. Now all of the Volvos are going to have this new Google-based system in 2023. But super easy to get used to. The screen here, just not a whole lot of things to be confused by. We have Google Maps up here. We have the audio screen right over here. We have the favorites and our sources we could pull up over here. We also have the phone screen and kind of your Google Assistant. We can swipe down from the top and set up different profiles. And we also can go down here for sort of just a jumbillation of the screen. We have Apple CarPlay for 2023. We have our camera system, which you can see, nice reversing camera, and it also is a 360-degree view camera system, I should say, which is available on the upper trims, but with the core like we have here, just get the rear view camera with the guidance lines and parking sensors, which is nice to have. If we go back to home, we have our heated seats and steering wheels, both for both sides. Then we can pull up the climate menu. As you can see, defrosters and AC settings up top, you know, where you'd like the air to blow up over here. And then your fan speeds at the bottom, you know, temperatures down below, and the sync there too. And we also have the settings. So there's a bunch of different settings you can go through. We have sort of driving modes and different driving, you know, safety assistance systems that we could turn on and off. We also have the sound settings for the audio system. We have connectivity over here too, which has to do with the Wi-Fi settings and different controls and things like that for your dimming, for your mirrors, you know, servicing settings and display settings and light settings, all kinds of good stuff in that menu. Then we have different apps and profiles you get set up, and then your system settings here too. And that pretty much does it for the screen. You know, very simplistic screen, does everything you need it to without being over complicated, and that's the good part about this new Google screen here. With a home button down below and then a little array of buttons such as your hazards and the defrosters, as well as your volume knob. And we can also have the little glove box release right there at the end. As you can see, there's a little shelf system in there. It's all lit up and felt lined, plenty of room in there. We have a couple of different storage areas here, one to put smaller things like change or storage or pencils or pens. We also slide this back. We have a 12-volt power outlet and 2 cup holders on there. 8-speed torque converter transmission for pretty much all Volvos. So we have straight down for drive, straight up for reverse, and that's when your reversing camera will pop up, and P for park. It's pretty neat gear selector, kind of like a hollow design for that. It's a really cool looking gear selector. I have the switch for the start stop for the engine, and we have the electronic parking brake and the auto hold feature. Nice design over here with the leatherette pattern and stitching, and we have a nice armrest which we could lift up, and we have 2 USB-C inlets inside. Passenger area has more of that brushed aluminum look for the trim. And then we could work our way up here to the mirror. It's all frameless, auto dimming, and also has your garage door openers. A little bit of a different redesign for the upper stack here. We have sort of touch sensitive lighting up here, which is pretty neat. Some SOS and messages controls up here, and also the controls for the panoramic sunroof. So as you can see, the shade blocks most of the light. You can just kind of do this swiping motion here to open up the shade for the roof. Sort of 2 different panes of glass. This front one will tilt and slide using that same button, that sort of slidey button over here, and you can close it by just swiping the opposite way. And a couple things else we can't forget about are the visors, and they have mirrors and lights and card holders and the grab handles. So with all that being said, that pretty much does it for all the features on the XC90. Let's go ahead and take this thing out on the road and see what it's like to drive. All right, so let's take this XC90 out for a little test drive. Now, a little overview of what we're going to do on this test drive. We're going to take it out to the sort of dead end over here. We'll get a test of the turning circle. For those of you who live in the city, you know, you also need a bigger car. Turning circle is pretty important, so we'll see how it does in that test. We'll then take it out onto a more of a main road, so like a 2-way highway. We'll get up to 45, 50 miles an hour. See what kind of noise, comfort level, and things like that we're working with at that speed. And then finally we'll get it out onto the back road, and that'll be the main sort of segment of driving for this video. You know, get an acceleration test. We'll see how this B5 2-liter turbo performs on the acceleration test, and we'll also get a good idea of what this car has to offer in the handling department and ride department and all that good stuff too. Alright, so let's take it to... Now, as you saw when we came to that stoplight there, or stop sign rather, the car activated the start-stop feature, which I could barely even tell the car turned off, and again, barely even tell when the car turned back on. And the turning circle test is pretty good. Now, Volvo doesn't offer a 4-wheel steering system. Some of its competitors do, but I don't know if this necessarily even needs it, because the turning circle is actually pretty good on this car already. I'm definitely really eager to see how this turbocharged 4 performs with, you know, the power ratings versus the weight of the vehicle and size of the vehicle. It should be pretty interesting to see how this motor does. So far, just giving it a little bit of a half throttle acceleration, it seems to be doing pretty well. Now, it is quite warm out today, so I do have the AC on. It's causing a little bit more noise, but we have some 20-inch wheels, which are on the smaller side of wheels for an XC90. I think the smallest wheel choice you get is 19 inches, the largest is 22, so we're right in the middle, sort of, you know, even on the lower end of wheel largeness, I guess you could say. But that definitely aids to comfort on this car, because you have a little bit of a thicker sidewall, you know, and that tire will absorb more of the impacts on the road imperfections rather than the hard rim. So pretty comfy up at this speed, you know, 45 miles an hour. You know, a little bit of tire noise you hear, but not really any wind noise coming from those larger mirrors, which they are pretty large mirrors, which will be good for towing. With the B5 motor, you could tow 4,000 pounds. With the B5 or T8 motors, you could tow up to 5,000 pounds. So that's a pretty good amount of weight, especially being that all of those vehicles have 4-cylinder motors. Okay, so there's not really any sport mode this XC90 or really any Volvos have anymore, but we'll definitely get an acceleration clip going up this hill here. So what I like to do is I like to get it up to about 25 miles an hour, and then kind of mash the throttle, see how fast we can get up to 60, and also see how fast the transmission reacts. So we have an 8-speed torque converter transmission, so we'll get that clip in now. Okay, so we have it up to 25. We'll mash the throttle and see what happens. So the transmission reacted very nicely to the throttle input. I have to say, the 4-cylinder turbo, you know, the B5 motor, is a little bit lacking in the acceleration department, you know, which is fine for if there's just me in the car. But if you start loading it up with people and luggage, you know, you might want to step up to the B6 or the T8 motor. Which again, you know, this motor is completely fine for going around town and even on the highway, you know, just for, you know, 1 or 2 people. But once you start, you know, packing it up with all kinds of things, you know, maybe a roof box and things like that to go on a road trip, it might start to feel a little bit sluggish. Which is why Volvo offers the, you know, more potent engine options. You know, I believe that 0 to 60 is just around 7 seconds. I think it's just a little bit higher than 7 seconds on the B5, which isn't bad, you know. You just maybe might need a little bit more power if you're loading the car up with people and luggage. Now that we kind of have it out on a more bumpy road, this isn't the most bumpy section of the test drive, but it definitely handles the dips and weaves in the roads very nicely. You know, it's not floaty or anything like that. It's a pretty good suspension setup. You know, you do hear the bumps a little bit, but you really don't feel them all that much. It's definitely a very comfort-oriented suspension. A little bit of body roll in the corners too, which is to be expected. You know, it's pretty much a front-wheel drive based all-wheel drive system, so you get a little bit of push in the corners, a little bit of body roll too. But after all, this is a seven-seater SUV meant for family hauling. At this point, kind of have the most bumpy part of the road, and you could definitely hear the bumps, you know, like I said earlier, but you can't really feel them. So that's a really good suspension setup there, especially for these bumpy Connecticut back roads. Kind of feel the lane keeping assist kind of keeping you in the lanes. As you saw the little you know, the little indicator in the speedometer screen there lit up yellow, and you can kind of feel in the steering wheel, it almost feels like you're going over rumble strips. You know, it kind of jiggles the steering wheel slightly back and forth like so, just to let you know you're getting outside of your lane. So that's a pretty good solution to the lane keep assist there. Now, this motor does have some pretty good low-end power. You know, the turbo definitely spools up pretty low in the RPM range, so that's good to kind of get you out of the lower RPMs to build more power quickly. Turbocharger works pretty good. Yeah, very comfortable suspension, and equally as comfortable seats. You know, these seats are sort of the base seats that will come in an XC90. You know, you can also upgrade to massaging seats, some that have cooled seats, you know, thigh extensions, 4-way lumbar instead of 2-way lumbar, you know, various things like that. And but these base seats do just fine. You know, in fact, I actually know family members of mine who own Volvos, and they will never, you know, buy anything else other than Volvos because of how comfortable the seats are. So that that definitely says something. Alrighty, so that pretty much wraps up the test drive and the whole video at that on the 2023 Volvo XC90 with the B5 motor and in the base core trim. So what are my wrap-up thoughts on this vehicle? You know, very nice design, pretty good value for the money too. I think this car is right around, you know, just around $60,000, give or take. I can't exactly remember what the price was, but there's not a whole lot of options on this vehicle either. So we have the climate package and protection package and all that good stuff, but you know, just a really good value for the money. You know, adaptive cruise control comes standard, lots of things have standard features, and it's just a really good looking car, you know, inside and out as well. And it does drive pretty good too. Definitely not the driver's choice for in this segment of SUV, but it does just fine, you know, with your daily commuting and going on vacations and things like that. And yeah, that pretty much rounds out the video. I hope you have liked the 2023 XC90 just as much as I have, and I also hope you stay with us here at Ty Drives for more videos just like this one.